What impacts us in line maintenance is we're doing everything outside, meaning rain, snow, ice, minus 25 degrees, plus 40 degrees. Yeah, different regions, different problems. So we have to ensure that the environment is suitable for the job and for the people who are doing it. Yeah, we want everybody to ensure safety not just to the aircraft, to the people who are doing the maintenance also.
We have some engineers in very interesting locations. We have one in Svalbard, which is the most northern island of Norway, when you might need to carry a gun because there are some polar bears, Augustina was laughing about, working with penguins, but in reality, you might have these kind of conditions when working in our locations as well.
You always feel pressure from the operator. Release my aircraft faster, yeah? Then maybe someone from production might come, oh, look, customer is pressuring us, do it faster. We have to, be able to evaluate every condition, and in order not to do something that will later impact the safety, and you might have, bigger consequences.
When an engineer comes on the aircraft and snaps a picture of a defect, the AI must be 100%, 110% sure that this is actually the way to troubleshoot and to fix the aircraft. Because if it gives the wrong answer, who do we blame? Do we blame the AI or the engineer? In probably 10 years' time, we'll have that for sure. But before that, we need to make sure that everything's done perfectly well and we can actually assure the safety.
Sometimes you think, why did they spend so much money if it can be fixed with a tape, yeah? Passenger sees and then thinks, oh my God, the aircraft is being fixed with a tape.
Duct tape, yeah.
What in reality happens, that there is some small defect, maybe some paint damage, let's say, just to prevent corrosion, they apply the tape, it's like a temporary measure, nothing related to the primary structure of the aircraft.
Ula, Augustinus, welcome to you both, and thank you very much for joining this FL Technics Talks MRO podcast. Obviously, I think you're the 6th episode of the guys joining us now. And we're going to be talking about line maintenance, right? Something very technical, and it takes us right onto the apron of, different flights that happen, takeoffs and different landings. But before we get into the technical side of things, we always like to start with something very personal. And there's always a story behind how someone got into aviation. What was that for you guys? I mean, what is the thing that bit you, or they call it the aviation bug, that got you into aviation? Ula, we'll start with you.
So thank you very much first for having us here, Michael. It's really nice to be here and to be on your podcast. So talking about where it all started, I actually was very fascinated about aviation from a very young age. Whenever we were flying on an aircraft with my family, when the pilot speaks and they say what kind of altitude we're flying at, what kind of temperature it is outside. So I was like always taking notes, I was like so interested in hearing all that information. And I think, just aviation as it is, it developed so quickly, and it was always so fascinating for me because, the industry just grew from 0 to 100% in like 50 years. So I think that was really cool, and I always wanted to be a part of it. Initially, I wanted to be a pilot, actually, but due to my eyesight and not being able to perform a surgery, I was like, okay, you know what? Aerospace maintenance, aerospace engineering, it sounds so cool. If I was there, a girl in these studies, I would be like really, really cool. And I still think so till this day, whenever I say aerospace engineer, everyone's like, wow, So I think this is what really got me into aviation. And, I went to study aerospace engineering, and then ever since I worked in aviation all my life. So
that's actually quite interesting because, you mentioned aerospace engineering. So something we actually have in common is that I also studied aerospace and aeronautical engineering, right? But another common denominator there is, everyone wants to start out by being a pilot, right? Because one of the very first few things that you see is like, these guys who walk in and they look very professional, they've got the cool hats and the cool suits, and they want, you look and you're like, oh, who are those guys? They're pilots, and I also want to be a pilot, right? Augustinus, was that the same for you?
Well, my story is not as romantic as Ula's, most probably, yeah. So I was always good at maths, at physics, yeah, and my natural course of studies was engineering. I just needed to decide which field of engineering, yeah. So I remembered always, my grandma had a house next to the airport. And usually as a kid, I was going there, working, digging potatoes, etc. And always those aircrafts were coming by, with loud noise, and I was always interested on how do they work, and that was like a natural selection for me. So, and then, yeah, I chose aerospace engineering, and my aviation journey continued from there now to line maintenance.
And
Yeah.
it's always so fascinating, the origin point of how people get into aviation. Fast forward to today, and Augustina, so I love that you mentioned that line maintenance. For us to kind of jump into the topic, right? Let's look at what you guys do, right? What do you guys do on a daily basis, and how does that actually then link to line maintenance? Augustinus, we'll go with you first.
Yeah, so I'm a head of LMCC department. So basically, what I like to say, we are just the problem solvers. Yeah. So in line maintenance, we are working on the aircraft that are flying every day, which come stuck on ground due to some defect. So we're always there to try to come up with the fastest plan how to recover that aircraft, how to make it flying again, and that the passenger shouldn't wait, 2 hours, 3 hours a day, to minimize that delay as much as possible. Yeah. So we coordinated from tools, materials to manpower, etc., everything to make it flying.
And Ula, your side?
Yeah, so I actually always struggle to explain what I do at work, but my position is Deputy Line Maintenance Manager in FL Technics. So what I do is usually, whenever it comes to line maintenance and like maintenance in general, people see the front line, our engineers who are working on an aircraft. And whenever I get asked like what I do and whenever I say it's maintenance, everyone thinks that I'm actually going on an aircraft and fixing it, but actually not as romantic as it is. It's a lot of administration behind what we do in line maintenance, and like keeping the safety standards, keeping the compliance standards is always a big part of line maintenance as well. So what my job involves is overlooking all the procedures, making sure that all our teams as well, they operate very smoothly, that we're always compliant with EASA regulations, authority regulations, that we provide the services as safely as possible. And also a big part of it is overlooking the engineers themselves. So all the engineers are actually authorized, trained, etc., and no one like from the street can come in and touch the aircraft actually. So a big part of my job is actually making sure that all of these engineers are properly trained, properly authorized, and they're like really good guys who are working on the aircraft. And also another part I would say is overlooking all the like station opening whenever we're opening new stations, just checking that all the procedures would be in place, the compliance would be in place. When it comes to audits, it's also like participating in audits and making sure that we have everything prepared well and good. So it's a really, really wide range of things that we do, especially like with the maintenance team. But yeah, I would say, as I said, not so romantic when it comes to administration, but I think it's it's a crucial part of line maintenance and any kind of maintenance.
We kind of jump straight into the technicals there, and just listening to you both, right? It almost sounds like you're politicians, right? Campaigning for, for line maintenance, which is really quite cool to kind of take it in that way. Before we do get deeper into the technicals, how would you both describe line maintenance in simple terms, especially for our viewers who may be watching and listening who don't know what line maintenance is? How would you describe it in simple terms? Ula.
So in very simple terms, I would say that line maintenance is the type of maintenance, fixing the aircraft that happens while the aircraft is sleeping or while the aircraft is staying on the ground in between the flights, for example. So whenever you fly on an aircraft and you land, and by the time the passengers leave the aircraft, the new passengers come in, this is when our guys, the engineers, coming in and check for any defects, any faults on the aircraft, or whenever the aircraft is landing for the night. So let's say sleeping in the airport, this is when our engineers also come in and perform maybe bigger tasks that don't have, like when they don't have enough time, let's say during the turnaround time, this is the task that they perform at night. So this is like in very simple terms, this is how line maintenance works. And just compared to, for example, base maintenance, our engineers perform all the works under the sky. You don't need any hangar for it. You just do everything just there at the airport on the apron.
Augustina, she mentioned that the airline or the aircraft is sleeping. Is that the case? Because you're actually working with it, right?
In some sense, yeah. But technically, yeah, our engineers are on the aircraft. They are turning the power on. Yeah, the aircraft is alive, let's say. But yeah, so our guys are technically doing all the scheduled maintenance planned by the customer, rectifying the defects that came with the aircraft, let's say, just to make sure that for the next day, that aircraft is flying without disruptions, because as Ula said, those aircrafts are flying during the day. Most of the time during the night, there are no flights due to multiple reasons, yeah. So that is the time when it's our job, to take care of the aircraft, do all the preventative actions, etc. And that way, yeah, we can ensure as least disruptions as possible for the aircraft for the day flights, yeah. So it's also a big attention on that point for the first wave flights in the morning, to release it so it goes flying, because later on, until you return to base, you might get stuck, so that is our job.
As I understand it, right, from what you've described and also just from my own personal knowledge, and I'm going to try and describe it and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. If we compare a car and an aircraft, right, where an aircraft, when it's going to be having very heavy checks, it needs to go into base maintenance, right? And then when the checks are much lighter, not needing to go into the hangar, that then is when line maintenance comes in. If you compare that with a car, possibly when your car needs to be serviced, to have a full service, work done on it, that's when it goes to garage. But then let's compare it to, for line maintenance, is the car going to, like, let's say, a service station to get gas or to get its engine checked or the oil checked. Is that the case, Augustinus? Yeah?
Yeah, similar analogy. That's correct. Most of the time in line maintenance, yeah, it's like check the oil, check if there's no defects,
Tire.
Afterwards, the refueling comes up, in the morning before the flights. So this is usually the case, yeah. But in some cases, yeah, we do something more, yeah, some scheduled maintenance. But yeah, as you said, quite a good comparison in this case.
You're the perfect person to be speaking about, this next thing, which is one of the biggest myths in line maintenance, and that's the duct tape, right? And for a number of years, now, people have seen and they've tweeted or they've memed about their planes being fixed, on the runway with duct tape or, speed tape, as they call it. What's the myth behind that? Like, is it special engineering tape? Like, what's the purpose behind duct tape?
Sometimes you think, why did they spend so much money if it can be fixed with the tape, yeah?
Very true.
Yeah, so this is like a natural phenomena, like what passenger sees and then thinks, oh my God, the aircraft is being fixed with a tape.
Duct tape, yeah.
But usually what in reality happens, that there is some small defect, maybe some paint damage, let's say, just to prevent corrosion. They apply the tape, it's like a temporary measure. Or for aerodynamics, if some sealant is not right, yeah. So it's nothing related to the primary structure of the aircraft. So it's not like safety related, I would say, yeah. So it's just like to ensure aerodynamic smoothness and, prevent most of the time the corrosion when there is some damage. So it's nothing to be worried about in reality. But yeah, when you see it, you get scared a little. That's for sure.
And I mean, Ula, what's your take on that? I mean, just the use of duct tape.
Yeah, I mean, as Augustina said, it's always the safety measures, as in like the corrosion protection is more like safety for, let's say for corrosion not to spread or something, but it's not, we're not duct taping the aircraft and letting it fly. Yeah. But also we were laughing the other day that you need to get authorized to apply the duct tape. Really? Like you need to be an authorized certified engineer to be able to apply the duct tape on the correct places of an aircraft. So it's not that easy as it sounds.
Now, okay, very fascinating, very interesting. And you mentioned about the tasks, right? Now, obviously, just to round off that part, the duct tape that's applied, it's applied by authorized dealers, authorized engineers. It's not just people applying tape randomly. And I guess it's to any defects or impairments which don't affect the flight of the aircraft, something very temporary. Something about line maintenance, right? Obviously, when an aircraft is on the apron, right? This is just before takeoff or after it's landed, right? at any given point in time, you could see anywhere between 5 to 15, 20 people around the aircraft. How do you tell which people around the aircraft are the actual line maintenance engineers? And in particular, what are the tasks that they do? Like, what's the difference between the line maintenance engineers, and the others are ground handlers, of course, but what's the difference? Augustinus, to you first.
Yeah, so in most scenarios, if everything is okay, you will not see the maintenance engineers because all the work is done, aircraft is ready to fly, handed over to the crew, all is good. So usually, they are the guys who are talking with the crew, they are checking something around the aircraft, maybe inspecting the structure, servicing the oil, etc. Because all the big jobs that they already did were done during the night. So for the passenger, it's not visible, yeah. But in reality, they, rectify defects, then may change some components, etc. We even do like engine changes and line maintenance, which it's quite a big job, yeah, and even nose landing gear changes. So this is kind of thing that people don't see, and the difference from ground handling is are the guys who take your baggage, marshal the aircraft, refuel the aircraft. I don't know. Also, do the towing and etc. Stairs and so on. So usually they are the guys that passenger still sees because due to times to load the baggage, etc. Make sure with the crew that aircraft is fueled and so on. So this is the case in our field.
Ula, from your perspective, right? You kind of get to see a full view of how these tasks are performed, when they're performed, be it day and be it night. Could you just break that down for us in terms of, okay, what's performed during the day, what's performed during the night from your perspective?
Yeah. So during the day, as Augustina's already mentioned, we hope not to have any tasks actually, because if everything's done at night and the aircraft is flying smoothly, we wouldn't have anyone to support it during the day. This is when it comes to AOG situations or aircraft on the ground situations that are usually happening during the day when the aircraft needs like an instant support from our engineers. When something unexpected happens, for example, they notice a fault that it wasn't there before, or like a bird strike happens, for example, this is when the airlines actually need our support during the day, because most of the time all the scheduled work is actually happening at night. So this is like a bit of a difference what happens between the day and night. And at night, our engineers come already with like some tasks that they need to do, and they already know what they need to do at night. And during the day, as I said, if we have an AOG, usually it's something unexpected, something that you can't really prepare for. And this is why we have our engineers, ready 24/7 for anything to happen and to support the airlines at all times.
Now, Ula mentioned AOG. We're going to come to that a little bit, but
Yeah.
I want to come back to the whole aspect of the aircraft sleeping at night, right? What are some of the tasks that, and Augustinus, I want to bring this over to you, that you perform during that night shift or that sleeping shift? What are some of those tasks?
Yeah, so as I already mentioned, so it includes some oil servicings, filter replacements, daily checks, weekly checks, A-checks. So this kind of tasks include like to check all the wheels, to check around the fuselage, check the wings for like any external damages, any leaks, just what happens during the operation, And also, some scheduled maintenance, so from different systems inspections, to physical inspections, I don't know, replacing a life vest, replacing a seat belt, what we most of the times laugh, like when aircraft becomes AOG because the seat is dirty, or somebody puked, or something like that. So that's also our job, as not nice as it sounds.
Not as romantic.
This is also like a part of it.
Yeah.
We hope that it doesn't happen too often, but it's our reality. And sometimes, during the OGs or something bigger happens, like a tail strike, some engine fault, and you need to replace the engine. So we have also that higher scope tasks that we also handle on the apron. Some tasks also require the input of the aircraft in the hangar, So then it comes a whole different story, with the management of this maintenance.
Talking about that criteria, right? In terms of, and we're still going to come to AOG, but the criteria between an aircraft needing line maintenance and then an aircraft needing base maintenance, right? What's the criteria then? Ula, I want to start with you there from your perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, so as Augustina has already mentioned, like we have different tasks in line maintenance and where to start here. So basically, when aircraft is flying, every flight cycle or every number of days or months, let's say, some tasks need to be performed on the aircraft. So it comes, from like some various checks to some changes on a structure, on some components, let's say. So this is where, like when it gets to some point, let's say it reaches some number of months, or some of these tasks are not able to perform on the line maintenance. They need to go to the hangar. They need to, kind of take the aircraft apart and perform those tasks in the hangar. So this leads to our scope because line maintenance is we can perform maintenance up to some scope. So up to some number of flight cycles of hours, let's say, or months. So this is when it comes, the difference comes between line maintenance and base maintenance. So as we mentioned already, base maintenance is when the aircraft goes into the hangar. And this is the biggest difference between line and base.
Now, one of the most interesting aspects or tasks, right, is you can also remove or make adjustments to the engine, I believe. And Augustinus, I want to come to you with that one because it's almost kind of taking a piece of the aircraft off the aircraft and, either repairing it or replacing it. That's quite a big task. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so engine replacement, it's how to say, not so rare in line maintenance, but of course you want to avoid it. So yeah, basically it's a longer job, as it's a big component, visually, but we have manuals, we have procedures how to remove, install, and it's in comparison to any other component, it's like a line replaceable unit, so we are able to handle it. Of course, what impacts us in line maintenance is we're doing everything outside, meaning rain, snow, ice, minus 25 degrees, plus 40 degrees, different regions, different problems, so we have to ensure that the environment is suitable for the job and for the people who are doing it, because we want everybody to ensure safety not just to the aircraft, but to the people who are doing the maintenance also. So at some points, let's say if it's minus 25 degrees, snowing, etc., you have to get a hangar or like an engine tent, etc., where you are able to control that environment. Some tasks, even like bigger structural repairs, which require paint stripping, etc., also always require like a controlled environment. Most of the time like a room temperature and something. So those cases you also use hangar. So it comes to base maintenance, so that is how we work and like the scope of jobs that we encounter.
I now want to talk about everyone's favorite topic, AOG, aircraft on ground. Exactly. Yeah, you just said
It's not my favorite.
Least favorite topic, I will say that.
And it's something that happens every day, right? All around the world, if you put it, on that scope. And when that happens, obviously a number of different teams have to kick in. Line maintenance teams kick in as well. Augustinus, I'll start with you first. For line maintenance, what actually happens during an AOG and how do line maintenance teams respond?
Yeah, so basically, when AOG happens, we usually receive like a request from our customer by call or by email, usually by call because it's urgent, So then our engineer reacts, goes on the aircraft, sees what is the problem, troubleshoots it, of course. Firstly, you try resets, etc., depending on the damage, on the defect and so on. And then if you are not able to rectify it simply, you might need to replace a component. You need to, I don't know, do some NDT inspections for some damage. If it's like a burst strike, do a boroscope inspection if it's like the burst strike came into the engine, So then we arrange all these like resources, like get an NDT inspector. If it's component, usually operator is responsible for it. So we're waiting for the component. We make sure that all the tools are there when it comes, all the consumable expendables are there when it comes, and the necessary manpower is there when it arrives to replace it as soon as possible, so the aircraft is ready as soon as possible also. So that is like, as I said, you said AOG, the favorite thing. When we have 0 AOGs, that's my favorite.
That's the best day.
And there's another side to that coin, right? So there's the engineering side, which is the hands-on task, but there's also the coordination, the planning around it, right? In terms of an AOG has happened, how does the whole team respond? Ula, from your side, what's your view on that?
Yeah, of course. So I think it's always, of course, Augustina's team, which is like the busiest with that part. And he's just reporting us back, what's happening. But also, like we have a logistics team working if, let's say, we need to get an extra component or something. Sometimes it's coming from operator. Sometimes maybe we can ship the component as well. Sometimes, like if we need some special support, we could even send an engineer with specific authorization privileges to work on some certain aircraft or some certain engines to perform works, like boroscope inspection, for example. Not everyone is certified to do so. So this is when, our team is also working to make sure that actually we get all the right people in. But usually, in our AOG locations, as we call them, those stations where we do only AOG works, it's a one-man show from our engineer. He drives to the airport, he checks what's happening, he reports back to Augustina's team as well, and just tries to make sure that everything's running smoothly, that he can solve that AOG as soon as possible.
Now, very interesting there, because you've mentioned locations and you also brought in logistics. And something that's very interesting, and Augustinus, you also mentioned this as well, where you're operating at different climates, different time zones, different weather, plus 40 degrees, plus or minus 40 degrees, or minus 25 degrees. Sorry, minus 40 is quite extensive.
Yeah.
Impossible.
It was together with penguins, yeah.
But I still want to come to that because, and Ula, I still want to stick with you because FL Technics, obviously, you are performing line maintenance services across a various number of locations. And it's different, I guess, in very small or maybe major ways at all these different locations. What does that look like, or what's, the standpoint in terms of just having a global operation of line maintenance?
Yeah, it's actually a really good question. And, like we show ourselves as a global operator. Of course, in line maintenance, we have some stations. Well, most of the stations are actually in Europe. So it makes for us a bit easier, to communicate with the engineers and to keep that going. We have a couple of stations outside of Europe as well. But it is actually really interesting work because we have some engineers in very interesting locations. We used to have a station in Greenland, for example. We have one in Svalbard, which is the most northern island of Norway, when you might need to carry a gun because there are some polar bears, Augustinus was laughing about, working with penguins, but in reality, you might have these kind of conditions when working in our locations as well. So I think it comes to, our engineers being prepared for all the weather conditions because it's also, their work is always outside. So I think, it's very tough for them sometimes, especially when it comes to like really snowy locations like in Norway and they need to dig themselves out of the snow. It's not only, supporting the aircraft, but also, making sure that they're safe as well. But we also, we always want to make sure that our engineers are doing well. So we always have like weekly meetings with them, checking in with them, how it is going, if we have any problems. When it comes to problems, it might be some tool is expiring, calibration, but it might be something else, So we're just trying to keep in touch with all the engineers to make sure that they're all doing well. And especially when we have such remote locations like, Svalbard or Tromsø in Norway. So yeah, just trying to put everything together, make sure that everything runs smoothly.
And I want us to expand on that a little bit. Augustinus, I'm going to pass it on over to you because, and something which you also mentioned earlier about that difference, right? If you're looking at stations in Tromsø, again, you're looking at weather which is, minus 20, possibly minus 30 degrees, right? If you look at more warmer climates, you might be looking at 30 degrees, 40 degrees Celsius, right? Different climates, different approaches, I guess, to line maintenance. Is that the case? I mean, how do you approach that in terms of weather? Are there certain things that you look at in a cold climate in comparison to a warmer climate, from an engineering standpoint?
Yeah, so there are some differences, like maybe not some exponential, but let's say, okay, if you're working in Norway, you will reach minus 20 degrees, always snowing, etc. Have to make sure that engineer has proper clothes, warm clothes that do not get wet easily, and etc. Of course, ensure also that he has like shoes which are equipped not to slip or something like that. We have, like, as I said, like if you need to replace an engine, so where you have the temperatures that go below zero, so during the winter we keep like engine tents, so we would ensure the controlled environment for engineers to do the job. And and in the warmer climates, it's like opposite story, so to ensure that for engineers from overheating, so that is the case. And especially in my team, we have like LMCC teams in Vilnius, in Romania, Otopeni station, and in Abu Dhabi. So 3 different regions, different time zones, so
and different climates as well.
different climates, and you have to manage different cultures even, so you have to adapt all to that, especially as a manager when you're handling all three of those. So, but it comes, with the process. You work together, we get to know each other, and we try to adapt as best as possible.
But, just listening to that again, you just talked about these 3 different locations, which is also a testament to FL Technics, your versatility to be able to, perform line maintenance at all these stations across various different conditions. One important aspect, which is also an important aspect of aviation in general, is safety, right? Safety across operations, safety across, it could be flight operations, even just passenger movements in an airport, right? There's always a safety consideration that is in mind, or not just in mind, but in implementation. How do you guys maintain the quality across all your different stations when there are different environments, when there are different schedules, different airlines, different operators? How do you maintain that quality, Ula?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Like safety is our main priority always. So I think it starts, from authorizing the correct people, making sure they are competent, working on aircraft. It's very important for us to make sure that our engineers, as I mentioned before, are well trained, are licensed, they all have EASA license, and that's the most important thing. They are experienced also working on the particular aircraft that they are planned to work on. So everything starts with their competence assessment, and we make sure that, whenever they're handling the tasks, they look into safety and they don't feel the time pressure when usually it comes, having these AOG situations. The airlines want to make sure that they can take off as soon as they can. So there is also like this human error possibility. There is a time pressure from airlines, from other teams as well. So we just need to make sure that our engineers are actually prepared for that, and they are resistant to any time pressure, and they can actually do their work perfectly, as safely as they can, and make sure before releasing the aircraft that everything is done correctly and perfectly. So we really value that, I think. And when it comes to our teams also, it's a lot of paperwork, administration parts to support all the safety. We have the safety officers in the team who are always overlooking our, safety KPIs. They're checking, what is happening with safety related issues, maintenance errors, and how they could impact the safety as well. So we are really, really interested in knowing, all the statistics, and also, of course, making sure that we work as safely as we can and provide the highest quality for the customers.
Mm-hmm. And Augustinus, for you, what would you add to that?
Yeah, so Ula talked about the safety regulations and proper authorizations of our people. I just would like to add, from the operations stand of view. So we always have meetings with the station managers, on weekly basis, sometimes on daily basis, to get a real overview what is happening there, so we could react faster, so in that way we could make the necessary changes before something bad happens.
We've spoken about the present. I want us to transition and take a tangent in terms of looking towards the future. The only way to do that, really, or one of the most significant events that happened within the last decades, was COVID. COVID came in and completely changed the industry, right? The whole aviation industry, I would say, or affected it. And if we put it in your words, Ula, right, a lot of the aircraft in the world were sleeping during that time, right? If you put it in that context. For both of you, how would you say COVID changed the industry, right? Keeping in mind that we've had an acceleration of digitalization, an acceleration now of AI, right? How has events like that influenced line maintenance today?
So, as you said, a lot of aircraft were sleeping during COVID. And for now, I think we're kind of like back to normal in line maintenance, because previously during the COVID times, since the aircraft were, parked, we were still doing a lot of like parking maintenance, because you still need to supervise the aircraft, even though it's parked. You can't just like leave it there, parked, because it has a lot of different checks to be done as well. So our engineers were actually busy on that. Maybe we had like less AOGs, but we had more tasks to perform on the parked aircraft. So, this is how we kept our engineers busy. But now I feel like, aviation going back to normal, line maintenance is back to normal as well. Now we're back to, proper work, like having AOGs, having scheduled maintenance, etc. But I think, when it comes to what COVID actually changed in line maintenance, probably it comes mostly to digitalization. Now, like for us, probably it's normal to have like online meetings nowadays. But I think before COVID, like it wasn't an option. And when it comes, for example, speaking to our engineers, as Augustina has also said, we have these weekly meetings with engineers, with station managers, to check what is happening in their station, if they have any problems, if there are any safety issues. So now we just do all the meetings online, just because knowing that we have so many stations across Europe and UAE. Yeah, exactly. We just try to keep it all connected. So I think that made a really big impact. And when it comes to, for example, audits now, previously everyone would go to audits all the stations in person. Now we can do a desktop audit, like just like online video call to audit what is happening in the station, which is helping a lot, because you don't have to travel so far. You save your time as well. So I think in these cases it is making our life a bit easier.
And from an operation standpoint, Augustinus?
Yeah, so as Ula mentioned, during the COVID period, aircraft stopped flying, more aircrafts were parked. From our line maintenance perspective, yeah, we had to work on the parked aircraft, because whenever it's parked, it's not like it can stand like a car left, in the parking lot, and that's it, You have to do some certain tasks periodically. You have to ensure that the aircraft components remain in airworthy condition, the structure remains in airworthy condition, and so on. So that like changed more like our work from night shift to day shift, because we were having the aircraft in the station, all the time, not just on the nights, and that changed our flow a little bit. Of course, the COVID itself, as the operator stopped flying, so impacted the, manpower problem. People were starting to be laid off, etc. Then they found another jobs in other fields, somebody maybe in other companies. And now that the aviation came back even maybe to higher numbers than what was before COVID. So you need the same amount of people, even more.
Yeah.
And whereas that deficit, and the training programs were stopped also during that period. So that influx of people also was delayed. So yeah, this is like the impact that is left over. In aviation, we still have this deficit of people, and it's projected for quite some time. In general, as for all companies, as Ula said, like less eye-to-eye visits. So we even had one customer coming this week, and he said, I was in your company last time 6-7 years ago.
It's before the COVID.
And it's always nice to meet in person, because it's like a whole different interaction than just in front of the cameras. So yeah, these are the things that I would point out regarding the COVID. Yeah.
You look at the industry today, almost everything that we do is influenced by digitalization, by tech, or by AI. Some people will just say by ChatGPT, of course. And when you look at it from a regulatory standpoint, you've had regulatory bodies such as the EASA, right, coming forth and saying, okay, we're going to be opening the conversation now with a lot of MRO organizations to kind of figure out how do we adapt or prepare for an AI-led world, or a more digital world. What's that conversation like, especially from both angles, right? operations and more from the admin, but let's start from the operations. What's that conversation like? Like, is there an influence on, let's say troubleshooting some tasks, right? Where digitalization comes in. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, yeah, YASA now also released like a roadmap how they see AI coming into the aviation. So sadly, of course, they project that it will be 10 years until we have like a strong functioning AI implemented, but maybe it will happen sooner. Yeah. So from my point of view, the AI could be, implemented in like few different fields, like if from maintenance standpoint of view, as I like to say, some like maintenance ChatGPT or something like that, where the engineer comes with the defect from the aircraft, describes it, then you immediately get an answer according to the manuals from the manufacturer. Is it releasable? Is it not? What further actions according to the documentation have to be done, which, shortens the time you need to spend analyzing all the documents. Because in aviation, we have like uh, different manuals, like that come from operators, that come from manufacturers, and etc. So in order to make a decision, either you have to know a lot, yeah, or you have to read through a lot of information, yeah. So this is where the AI can, influence our like decision making, make it faster by analyzing like bigger pool of data. And the same is related like to logistics, component management, tracking, etc., even preventative maintenance. There are some like digitalized solutions now, like Airbus Airman, which sends messages from the aircraft and detects something wrong. But AI, I believe, could improve that process also by having, being able to deal with a bigger pool of data, So this, I think, will be like in the nearest future what we will have. And afterwards, I don't know, maybe robots will fly the aircraft.
But because that's really interesting, and I want to just stick on that a little bit, where you mentioned this MRO ChatGPT, right? Which is almost kind of a more practical way of seeing how AI can come in, because from today, even whether it's the engineers or the pilots, there is still a human hand that's needed in the operations, right? I mean, the last thing you want to do is, or as a passenger, is to kind of look out your window and you see a robot putting tape on the wing. Like, you don't want to see that. But
Not at this point.
but it's really important to have that human hand, and it's also part of the safety, right? Because that human influence guarantees that safety as well. Well, I want to come to you, especially on this conversation with the EASA, right? How are you, especially from, let's say, an audit point of view, right? Those implementations coming in, AI or the ChatGPT, how are you kind of navigating that?
Yeah, so I think, as Augustina said, probably it's not going to happen for next 10 years. Maybe we're hoping it's going to be quicker. But I think, having engineers working on an aircraft is actually trustworthy. And when you see the engineer outside, when you see a human outside the aircraft fixing it, I think it makes a lot of sense, and it makes everyone feel a bit easier, and instead of seeing the robot. But yeah, when it comes to, for example, ChatGPT in aviation, let's say, I think, first we need to make sure that it's actually really safe, because it's when it comes to safety, we want to make sure that we offer the highest quality, highest safety, when it comes to fixing the aircraft. So yeah, I think it's a lot of iterations on AI that need to happen before we can actually release something like aviation ChatGPT. Let's say when an engineer comes on the aircraft and snaps a picture of a defect, the AI must be 100%, 110% sure that this is actually the way to troubleshoot and to fix the aircraft. Because, if it gives the wrong answer, who do we blame? Do we blame the AI or the engineer? So it's a really tricky question. I think, in probably 10 years' time, we'll have that for sure. But before that, we need to make sure that everything's done perfectly well and we can actually assure the safety. When it comes to audits, I think some kind of AI auditor, let's say, would be a possibility as well. Because, if we have an audit, done by a video call, why can't we have an AI robot having done that audit and checking all the documents? When it comes to documents, I would say it would be probably not so difficult to check everything and just to make sure that everything's in place and everything's done correctly. But even, like an AI auditor who was like, checking all the station, viewing everything through the camera, maybe that could be a solution, because, usually the auditors come to the station and see around what's happening in there, apart from all the documentation checking. But it could be possible, I think, in some years' time.
It could be possible.
Not now.
As you're both describing this, obviously it's something that's not just being experienced in MRO or in aviation. It's happening across all industries. But one common denominator or one common undertone under all of it is that even behind the digitalization or the AI, there's still people, right? And people will remain a very important part of operations, a very important part of audits, of, making sure that things run correctly. When you look at the career, the line maintenance career, right? It's a very specialized path, right? You need to know what you're doing when, let's say, there's a defect or an engine needs to be changed or there's an AOG. For people listening today, could be young people looking to get into line maintenance, or someone who maybe has done it in the past and is saying, okay, I want to come back into it. What does the path look like today in terms of entering line maintenance and operating in that environment? Augustinus?
Yeah, so basically, it depends on which path you choose. If you are choosing to become like a certifying engineer, so the path is usually like gathering 5 years of practical experience, finishing 13 modules, finishing the exams for those modules, and then you are able to apply for the MTML license, and then you get a type training, then you are able to endorse that type into your license, and then you are able to sign off the work that is performed on that aircraft type, there are some alternatives to that role, like if you are enrolling into 1457 certified organization which has the certified program, so that might shorten your need of that practical experience. But usually it's like a 5 years road, which when you start, you don't want to give up on it.
You want to see it through,
And there are like, then of course, next to the certifying engineer, there are all the support units, camo engineering, planning, I don't know, DOA, who are designing like modifications and etc. So that usually comes like from finishing aviation studies. Then you go working in the company who does that, gather practical experience, getting authorized internally, and then you continue your journey, and it may lead you to many different ways, even where you didn't expect, I didn't think I would be in that position, because I started from mechanic myself, so at some point I switched.
You switched
to the engineering, and now I'm happy where I am. So
Ula, we've just heard the perspective from the certified engineer route. From your experience as well as deputy line maintenance manager, what has that path been like for you, and what could that path be like for someone who's maybe looking at you and saying, oh, I want to do what she's doing?
Yeah, so my path was also, finishing aerospace engineering studies. I also, as Augustinus, probably I didn't expect to end up here in this position where I am now, but I always wanted to do something with aviation, to work in aviation. So interestingly, actually, I worked for FL Technics for 1 year actually during COVID, and then I left. I went to Airbus to see more like of industry in the manufacturer side, and then I came back to FL Technics in this position. So I think collecting the knowledge and collecting the experience is the main thing when working in aviation and wanting to build a career in here. Of course, it always helps when you have graduated from aerospace engineering or anything aviation related, even if you're certifying staff, for example, like authorized engineer, let's say, you can still switch careers and move on to the office roles because, for example, in our team, the maintenance team, for example, my manager, the maintenance manager, the requirement for this role is to have a license, to have a knowledge on aircraft, to have plenty of years of experience as well. So I think collecting the experience in aviation is the main thing, but then it can lead you to wherever you want to be.
And one aspect of that as well is when you look at the engineering or just engineering in general, it can be perceived, and there is a perception of it being male dominated, right? But what we see today is we see a lot of female engineers going into a number of different industries and making an impact. We have a female engineer here today who's also making an impact. What would be your message to, let's say, some of the women or girls who may be watching or listening to this today, in terms of, they may have a passion or an interest or a little spark in terms of going into engineering? What would you say to them in terms of your own experience as a female engineer?
So I would say go for it, first of all. As I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast as well, or aviation engineering, aerospace engineering, it always sounded so cool, regardless who you are, a lady or a boy. But being a girl in aerospace engineering, I think it's even cooler, and it shows, how strong you are, because of course it is still very much male dominated, but I see the aviation industry shifting towards getting women in the aviation. Of course, when it comes to line maintenance, to be honest with you, we don't really have that many women engineers, certifying staff who are working on aircraft. We have a couple, which I'm very proud of, but it's mostly men who are working on aircraft. But also, if you want to be based in the office, you want to do administration bits as well, but still be very close to aviation and to aircraft, you can always follow this path of aviation as well. And I think for me, like studying aerospace engineering as well, mainly being surrounded by guys in the field, in the studies, it was always really, really nice actually, because I never really felt like I'm like less than anyone else. I always felt like, I'm treated as equal, even more probably sometimes I was even like praised for being a girl in aviation industry, which is really nice, because I feel like, probably that was the case before when it was only men everywhere, and now we have growing number of girls and women in aviation. And actually now it's very funny because like in line maintenance as well, like especially in the office, we have so many women and we're so proud of that. Like we're so happy about it. So I think, this industry is open for everyone, regardless of who you are. But for girls watching this, I would say definitely go for it if you're interested in any kind of engineering. The path is there and it's very, very doable.
And I think that's one of the unique things about aviation, right? When you look at it, could be the engineers, it could be ground handlers, ground operators, it could even be female pilots as well, right? Like there's so much impact that we're seeing today, and so much support as well in terms of being inclusive with everybody, right? Regardless of whether you're male or female. And, it really shows in the industry that it's almost like a full family, right? Well, of all of us working together and kind of making that impact. Augustinus, I want to come to you. You mentioned training earlier, right? And you also brought in, the aspect of there being a deficit within the industry. Again, line maintenance being a specialized role, a specialized task that someone can take on. You need your 5 years, to go into it. What's the mindset that someone needs to have in terms of coming in and dealing with things like the pressure, the difference in terms of environments, the different demands, time sensitive issues? What's the mindset that someone needs to have?
Yeah, so basically first thing that comes like what is specific to line maintenance is like called nerves, because as we talked about EOGs, etc., you have to, stay calm, not lose your mind, because you always feel pressure from the operator. Release my aircraft faster, 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 yeah? Then maybe someone from production might come, oh, look, customer is pressuring us, do it faster, etc., So you have to, be able to evaluate every condition, and in order not to do something that will later impact the safety, and you might have, bigger consequences if something happens, in the worst case scenario, aircraft crashes, what we all want to avoid. Why is it's so important in aviation? Everybody says safety is number one, number one, number one. Yeah, and yeah, roughly, it's like a can-do attitude, because usually, line maintenance is not like usually a big station, with like 20 people. Usually it's like a smaller operation, like 5 people, sometimes 1 person, as Ula said, like in on-call location. So no, usually you have to have that can-do attitude instead of like saying, I will not go, it's cold outside, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, and you have to be determined, yeah, because at the beginning the path looks long, but when you reach that point, as I said, like 5 years of practical experience, etc., then you reap the rewards, So you should never give up in the middle, because you will regret it afterwards.
And Ula, from your view, would you add to that as well?
Yeah, so I think, as Augustina has mentioned, it's really, really important for us to have that can-do attitude and extra mile as well. And I think that's very important because, as you said, Augustina, it is really important for our engineers to be willing to do extra steps, especially, for example, when you're alone in the station, you need to do a lot of things on your own. So going to the aircraft is one thing, but you need to make sure that all the tools are okay, the calibration is not expired, all the chemicals are there, not expired, etc., making sure that the tool room is actually clean and tidy. Also supporting the audits, which sometimes probably as an engineer you would think, oh, I'm just going to fix the aircraft and that's it. But it doesn't really end just there. So I think, making sure that you have that extra mile mindset, that attitude of going there and doing extra things, what are asked for, it's very important for us. And of course, cold nerves, that's that's 100% sure, because as I mentioned,
You can see like the gray hairs.
The gray hair starting to form
yeah, exactly.
earlier than expected.
But also, if you reach this path, and as Augustina said, if you don't drop it midway through, you get to go to all these cool locations as well. You get to work on these different aircraft, and I think it's a very rewarding thing of a career as well.
As a final question, which I'd love to hear from you both, what would be your message, or what is your message to engineers or future engineers who may be listening, or who maybe might find this podcast a month, a year, or 2 years from now, in terms of entering line maintenance and putting in that work to getting that reward, and ultimately carrying that responsibility of preparing a flight and also taking care of a flight after it's landed? What would be your message? Ula?
Yeah, so I would say, it's very important to know what you want early enough, especially when it comes, to being an engineer, especially who's working on aircraft, because, we have quite a long, extensive path of getting your certification and authorization done. 5 years is quite a long period to be going for one target. So I think, you need to have your mindset on that. But also, like just to check what you like and what you don't like. If there are so many different opportunities, for example, internships and apprenticeships, job shadowing. I know that even FL Technics are doing the job shadowing right now for school age people, which I think is very cool because you can actually see what kind of things are happening in the hangar, what kind of things are happening in the office. Maybe you'll find what you like. So myself, I did an internship in the Baltic Aviation Academy. Actually, I was working next to the simulators. And I think that was also one of the stepping stones in my career, knowing that I actually want to work in aviation. So just have your targets there and you'll get all the rewards later.
Augustinus?
Yeah, so just that tool, I will say there's nothing more rewarding than seeing the aircraft fly, So, it's kind of maybe cliche, let's say. But you can see like even engineers, like technicians, you do the job, you go back to the office, you open flight radar, and they're watching. It flew off, and they feel proud, So that is very rewarding. When you can see the result physically, you don't need to imagine it. You don't need to, let's say, understand it from some kind of numbers, like in some fields you have to, So it's, I would say it's rewarding. It's worth the trouble, worth the effort. And if you're into engineering and aviation, please, the floor is yours.